No one helped the Italian billionaire, until the waitress greeted him in Mandarin. The security footage would later show that Marco Ricci had been sitting alone for 47 minutes before anyone approached his table. What the cameras couldn't capture was that this moment would change both their lives forever, or that someone was watching them from across the restaurant, already plotting their downfall. Marco stared blankly at the menu, the words blurring before his tired eyes. 3 weeks in America, and he'd never felt more isolated. His empire of luxury hotels spanned 4 continents, yet here in this modest San Francisco diner, he was invisible. The waitstaff had been avoiding his table, his Italian accent too thick, his requests too complicated. He considered leaving when a soft voice broke through his thoughts. Asterisk, would you like some help? Asterisk, came the gentle question in perfect Mandarin. Marco's head snapped up, meeting the warm brown eyes of a waitress whose name tag read Lily. For the first time since landing on American soil, someone had spoken to him in the language he'd spent 5 years mastering after expanding his business to Shanghai. Asterisk, you speak Chinese? Asterisk, he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I studied in Beijing for 4 years. Thought you might be more comfortable ordering in Mandarin. Your textbook was open to Chinese characters. What neither of them realized as they shared that first smile was that the man watching from the corner booth would soon threaten everything they were about to build together, or that Lily carried a secret that could destroy Marco's carefully constructed world. I'm actually Italian, Marco admitted with a small laugh. But after 3 weeks of people treating me like I'm invisible or stupid because of my accent, hearing Mandarin feels like home. Lily's shift was ending, but something about the sadness in this stranger's eyes made her pull up a chair. I'm off the clock now. Why don't you tell me what brings an Italian businessman to this particular diner? Marco hesitated. In his world of cutthroat business and false friends, genuine interest was rare. But there was something about Lily's direct gaze that made his carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. I came to close a deal that would save my family's company, he confessed. But I'm beginning to think I've made a terrible mistake. The truth was more complicated. Marco's billion-dollar hotel empire was on the verge of collapse, a fact known only to him and his board of directors. The American investors he'd been courting had been stringing him along, deliberately isolating him from potential allies. What he didn't know was that Lily had once worked for the very investment firm trying to orchestrate his downfall. Their connection was immediate and electric. Over coffee that turned into dinner, Marco found himself sharing things he'd never told anyone, about his father's death, the weight of carrying on the family legacy, the loneliness at the top. Lily listened, really listened, occasionally dropping bits of street slang that made him laugh despite himself. That deal sounds sus, she said when he explained the contract terms. Those investors are straight up playing you. Her directness was refreshing. By the time they parted ways that night, exchanging phone numbers with shy smiles, something had shifted in Marco's universe. For the first time in years, he felt seen, not as the Italian billionaire, but simply as himself. What he couldn't have known was that Lily would spend that night poring over her old finance textbooks, determined to help this stranger who had somehow touched her heart. Or that her former boss was already making calls, having recognized her talking to their target. 3 days later, Marco sat across from the American investors, their smug faces telling him everything he needed to know before they even spoke. They were lowering their offer, again, knowing he was running out of time and options. Take it or leave it, said Richard Keller, the firm's shark-like CEO. You're not exactly drowning in alternatives, Ricci. Marco was about to concede when the conference room door opened. Lily walked in, dressed in a crisp business suit, carrying a folder of documents. Actually, she said coolly, Mr. Ricci has a better offer on the table. The room froze. Marco stared at her in confusion as she placed a comprehensive counterproposal before each investor. A proposal that revealed she understood international finance at a level that made the blood drain from Keller's face. Who the hell are you? Keller demanded. Someone who recognizes when good people are being taken advantage of, Lily replied, her eyes never leaving Marco's. And someone who knows you've been deliberately tanking Ricci Hotel's stock through your shell companies. The revelation sent shockwaves through Marco's world. As they left the meeting, the investors now scrambling to salvage their reputation, he pulled Lily aside, his heart pounding. Why would you help me? You don't even know me. Lily's eyes filled with tears. Because 3 years ago, I stayed at your hotel in Rome. I was broke, stranded, and your staff treated me with dignity when no one else would. You've built something special, Marco. Something worth fighting for. Their hands touched, and in that moment, both knew their lives had become irrevocably intertwined. What began with a simple greeting in Mandarin blossomed into a partnership that would eventually save Marco's company and heal his wounded heart. But their story was far from over. Richard Keller wasn't a man who accepted defeat gracefully. 2 weeks after the failed takeover attempt, Lily received an unmarked envelope at her apartment. Inside were photos of her meeting with Marco at the diner, along with a handwritten note, "I know what you're hiding. Meet me tomorrow, or he learns everything." The secret Lily had been keeping wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Before Beijing, before her finance career, she had been married to Keller's son. The marriage had ended badly, with accusations that had nearly destroyed her. She'd changed her name, rebuilt her life, and vowed never to let anyone close enough to hurt her again. Until Marco. That night, as they walked along the Embarcadero, the bay waters reflecting the city lights, Lily knew she had to tell him everything before Keller did. "There's something you need to know about me," she began, her voice trembling. "Something I should have told you from the beginning." Marco took her cold hands in his. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." The relief that flooded through her at those simple words nearly brought her to her knees. As she revealed her past, the failed marriage, the false accusations, her connection to Keller, Marco's expression remained unchanged, his eyes never leaving hers. When she finished, breathless and terrified, he simply pulled her into his arms. "My nana had a saying," he whispered against her hair. "Our scars are just proof we were stronger than whatever tried to hurt us." The next day, they faced Keller together. The man's smug confidence faltered when he saw them walk in hand. "You think you've won," Keller sneered. "But the board will never accept an ex-convict's girlfriend as part of this deal." Marco stepped forward, his voice deadly quiet. "My father built our first hotel with his bare hands after surviving a war that took everything from him. If you think your threats scare me, you understand nothing about resilience." What Keller hadn't counted on was that Marco had already spoken to the board, not just about Lily's financial brilliance, but about the attempted blackmail. By evening, Keller was facing an ethics investigation, and Marco was offering Lily a position as his company's chief financial strategist. 6 months later, as they stood on the balcony of his newly renovated San Francisco hotel, Marco wrapped his arms around Lily's waist, breathing in the scent of her hair. "You know," he whispered, "I almost didn't go to that diner that day." Lily turned in his embrace, pressing her forehead to his. "And I almost called in sick." "Some might call that fate," he said. "I call it the best decision I ever made," she replied, rising on her tiptoes to kiss him as the California sunset painted the sky in shades of promise. The grand reopening of Ricci Hotel's flagship San Francisco property became the talk of the industry. What few knew was that each room now contained a small card in multiple languages, including Mandarin, with a simple message, "No guest stands alone." It was Marco and Lily's promise, that in their hotels, no one would ever feel invisible or unheard. On their 1-year anniversary, Marco took Lily back to the diner where they'd first met. As they slid into the same booth, he reached across the table and took her hand. "I have something to ask you," he said, his accent still thick but his eyes clear and certain. Before he could continue, the elderly owner approached their table, beaming. "You two are my favorite success story," she said, placing a small cake before them. "On the house." When she left, Marco pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. I wanted to ask you here, where everything changed. Where you saw me when no one else did. Lily's eyes filled with tears as he opened the box to reveal a ring with a stone that caught the light like a promise. Ti amo, he said simply. Will you build this life with me? Her answer was in Mandarin, Italian, and finally English, yes, 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 as the diner erupted in applause from staff who'd been watching the whole time. Sometimes the greatest journeys begin with the smallest connections, a greeting in an unexpected language, a moment of kindness when the world has turned its back. For Marco and Lily, it was proof that even in our darkest moments, we're never truly alone. If you were moved by Marco and Lily's story, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that remind us of the power of human connection. We'd love to know, what country are you watching from today?